The people here are left distressed and, stranded. For most of them, they are having to loiter around, spend the night in the open air at the mercy of the weather. Themselves, their children, their wives, or even husbands all together.
Maybe a young storm. I got sure come on to a fan and bear come a young storm. Oh, Papa, I can anya face the face now. When one you walk, Manglopo walk and when you want.
She take baletani near your beer in show, come on, any being near your beer lolo.
First, I'm sure I shown than the war by beer. Or by cotton short and job, I used to not buy care that or banning sure. She not born a case defense and if I can why her corner shake when the pressure back on her be and the couple more to do.
She's been telling me that they've been living here for about 8 years or so, and that the sea has taken down their house, and so now she lives in a store which is right ahead of this particular point, and she lives there. And this lady also has a baby. Of an obilenya.
Milena 4 months.
Obilena 4 months. One bokelewo.
Of an what true kumo biane waben wash. Biane what true kumo ben war.
The true kumo, you better know here in Benekelewo.
What you are by what you are by no come war.
If you are buying there. So she's been telling me that they have to, put up a tent to pass the night at the mercy of the weather, together with this baby she's holding, a 4-month-old baby. One town
affair take a wow. There no, 1 town affair. She won't pee, won't puff a yaffy take a wow.
Just in the past couple of minutes that we arrived here, there's, an excavator that is carrying some of the rocks and then some of the boulders and putting them just across the shoreline, something the semblance of a temporary, protection for them. At this side of town, the women, the children, really are the ones who are bearing the brunt of the waves. Let me speak to some of the gentlemen who are here and gathering around.
Main reason why every brother they ensure a fight, a destroy any be okay. I feel no koya immediately, but we don't know what to say. The whole town will just go off. And Paco on Tayo Kolu or each of me. I can be a peto man. In the Munka Jena, Mun, impeto, Nyanjonakano.
He says, "Wopeto man." That's in God translators. They just hang around wherever that they can find. He says his wife and child hang around somewhere. He also hangs around somewhere until day breaks, and then they continue their journey in search of a new place they can call home. Past couple of minutes that we arrived here, the project manager, Mr. Godfred Kwaku, together with a few of his officers, have arrived here. And as you can see, the excavators are working now.
You see, normally sea waves are extremely high in August and September. And then with the global warming, the waves are even higher. We could see in other European countries how the sea is causing havoc. So that has increased the wave height and the erosion of the area which we have been contracted to operate. So what we are doing now is we have to eliminate or minimize the effect of the erosion. So if you could see, I've arranged some boulders, big boulders, parallel to the beach. That is to minimize the erosion while we are doing the construction. Maybe after Friday we should be able to cover them up. So.
I was just asking a direct question that the expectation is that by the end of this week, you mentioned Friday,
yes.
By the end of this week, this place will be protected.
Yes, it will be, I cannot say fully protected, but minimize it. Because if you say fully protected, then means that nothing can happen. But I'm trying to minimize the effect on the waves. I can't give assurance that fully when I do this, it's even possible that the waves can be even higher than what I'm doing.
All right, so this morning on the show, as you've seen, we're concerned for the people at Glefe, not just Glefe though, but there are several other communities who are having their sea take over their homes. We've been running the story about Glefe for a while now as part of our Join Your Community series. These homes are being consumed by the sea, and it's serious. Imagine living in a place like this where you can't guarantee that your home will be there the following day. Something is being done about it, as you heard the engineers say, but it seems it's not happening quickly enough. We're engaging some engineers this morning to see the best way out under the circumstances, and they've already joined us via Zoom.
Yes, they have. So we have engineer Gabriel Mahama, who's a civil engineer, and okay, so engineer Gabriel Engerman, who's a civil engineer, and engineer Abdullah Mahama, who is a roads and building contractor. Good morning and welcome. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Good morning.
Morning. Okay, so let me start with you, engineer Gabriel Engerman, if I can call you Gabriel. So, you know, we hear a lot about these tidal waves and, you know, we see the damage that it causes and all of that. But, like, what exactly is happening, you know, on that level? What exactly is happening for all of these, you know, buildings to be weakened and for them to eventually be falling to the ground?
I lost you a bit. Were you referring to me so that I know whether I can respond or
Yes,
not?
please, I was.
Okay. So if I understand your question, you want to understand probably what is happening that all this destruction is happening with regards to the tidal waves on the shoreline,
Yes,
right?
please. Yes, please.
Yes. I would like to say good morning to your cherished listeners and just indicate that with regards to this issue, it has been a long-standing issue. The shoreline has really retreated inland for quite a long time, and this has been as a result of a number of factors. Basically, those that are common to us, like the climate change, which subsequently affects the rise in sea level, is very prominent now. This year, we've had a lot of flooding, even in various parts of the world, and this has all been as a result of climate change. You notice that there's a number of studies that have been done that have indicated that the rainfall will increase in rainforest areas, but then other areas rather would not experience too much rain. And then there'll be quite a number of, you know, issues with regards to flooding and rising sea and water levels. Another issue too is the man-made activities, you know, especially along the coastal areas and coastal communities. You know, a lot of sand winning and dumping of waste, even constructing of buildings along the shoreline, all contribute to the weakening or the shoreline being affected. And these man-made activities are factors that, as we speak now, it will be difficult to entirely stop because the communities and people living there have stayed there for quite a long time, and it's a big challenge to just move them away entirely. A number of factors play a role. There's a hydrological cycle, the trend and patterns of the waves, and I believe the meteo and many studies have been done to point to the fact that the robust nature of the sea, which is a natural, a process, is being affected because of some of these anthropogenic activities that are occurring along the sea, the shoreline. And therefore, it affects or changes the biodiversity, changes the patterns of the sea. And in the end, we get this, our communities along the coastal area being affected, their buildings and their homes being destroyed and being washed away. And it's not going to just stop like that. It doesn't stop overnight. It's a real big challenge that we have to battle with. So if I want to go into details, we'll talk a lot about the causes. But these are some of the, let me say, basic key causative effects of what is happening at our coastal and shorelines.
All right, so Engineer Gabriel, I understand what you've had to say, but I am also curious. This is Israel, by the way. I'm also curious. Is it the case that it's affecting the entire shoreline or coast of Ghana and West Africa, or is affecting particular areas? Because we increasingly hear about Glefe in particular communities. We hear about Keta and the rest. So are some areas more impacted than others, and why is it so?
Oh, okay. Yes, the areas, there are definitely areas that are likely to be more impacted than others, because along the coastal line, you have certain, even if you just drive along the coastal line, you realize that some portions are a little bit rocky, and then some portions are basically beach sand.
Sure.
So for areas that are rocky along the shoreline, you realize that they have a little bit of resistance, and the shoreline is not receding as much as areas that are just sand or let me say the beaches, weak sand or soil so that is where the impact is. So those communities that have always been impacted, Glefe, and all those areas, even in certain parts of Keta, you realize that those areas they don't have rocky structures along the beach line or along the shoreline, and that is where those that are not in those areas or the weak parts will be affected more. So that's the basic explanation for that.
For that, let me bring in Engineer Abdullahi Mahama into the conversation. So, is there any way, in the whole planning of Accra and all of that, when people sat down to plan the city and all of that, was there any way that we could have foreseen that if we didn't put certain structures in place, this would have happened?
Well, good morning to your viewers. Like my colleague engineer rightly said, this issue has been on for a very long time, and it has been in order. Like every government that comes in decide plans to continue with the processes that is to continue with the sea defense, but it's just because of the amount involved. So it's like they are doing them in lots. As for we, the engineers who know the problem, and likewise the government, because they have ministries which are responsible for ensuring that these things do not occur, like the Ministry of Works and Housing, which is much into this. So they have engineers like us who are there to advise government as to what to do subsequent. But it's just because we have a very long stretch of the coastal line. And so it's like when you are doing more or less like any building or road construction, as and when you will get some money that you think you can use for the project, you earmark for the project. So right from the Axim to Adan or to Aflao, wherever we have the severest of the problem is where government decide to tackle first. Like my colleague engineer was saying, when you're around the Cape Coast area and even some part of the Winneba area, you see that there are some high altitude areas with the rocks. So they are all more or less serving as the sea defense already. So where you have the severest of the problems, like what you're talking about the Glefe now, is where government has to rechannel or refocus and then try to fasten or hasten the construction to help the people not to lose all the land. Because once we are losing the land, it becomes extremely expensive to reclaim part of the land again. And already, if you had so much money, obviously we would have finished this sea defense already. But once there's not so much money, we have to look at the severest areas and start to tackle them as measures to not to allow the sea to actually take most of the land. Secondly, my colleague was mentioned, but I think one of the things that was missing was it's part of the global warming. And once the iceberg is still melting almost every single time, obviously the sea will be rising. And so even with the construction that they are doing now, we have to preempt that if we are doing at 1 meter or 1.5 meters and we are hitting the sea, so the water is already hitting maybe 0.5 just below, it means that in the nearest future, we would have to even increase the height of the stone, what do you call it, the sea defense, or i.e. the boulders and the rocks which are being used to install to protect the indigenous from having a lot of damages to your properties.
Okay, so on face value, are you saying that really all we need to construct the sea defense is the boulders and the rocks and stuff?
Yeah, we do. If you look at what they do from the Winneba, Axim, what do you call it? Some part of the Volta region, it's just the interlocking and range. It's not just this. What we do is the finished product you see, but a lot goes into the engineering of the area so that you can have it so cased. You have to be cased enough in order not to move, because the tidal waves are increasing the strength, or the magnitude is increasing by the day. So it's well engineered by specialists, and then it's worked on. Some of the areas, they normally have to do with the non-rust iron to actually tie them up, like what we did when you go into the Ebri enclave. But it has to be done by the specialists, and then every area would have to have a certain, depending on the topography of the land.
Okay, got that. So now, Gabriel, let me come back to you. Let's actually talk about now the structures that have been built there. Are they? Let's start off with. Are they naturally weak, or have they been weakened systematically by the tidal waves?
I can see you're now an engineer because you are saying the things as it is. In two ways, they are weak, and also they are being weakened by the tidal waves. So if you look, I mean, looking even at the video, you could see that most of the structures that are not resilient to either sea wave, or tidal wave destruction. They are not very strong. And if you read if you read some portions of scripture in Matthew 7 thereabout, it talks about if you build your house on the sand, the waves and floods can hit it and make it unstable. And those that are at the beach or at the shoreline right now, they are not that strong, and the sea or tidal waves have receded inland so much so that all these structures are being affected. The soil is not a good, medium for constructing some of these houses. And apart from that, too, the area is very, very overpopulated. There's a lot of activities happening there, and all that impacts on the biodiversity, impacts on the shoreline, and this is weakening the foundations of the buildings that exist there. Some of the buildings are, strong, and, probably the foundation has been done very well, but most of them, especially the houses, are not that strong. And it's as a result of the impact of the waves, and also as a result of the fact that they are not constructed in the most appropriate way in terms of engineering, if we want to talk of structural integrity of buildings that we want to put up.
Okay, so I guess it's safe to say that there was no architect roped in the building of these houses, or a draftsman or anything like that.
Yes, it's an architect and an engineering collaboration for putting up these buildings. These buildings were, when they migrate, and they want a place to stay, they easily put up some of these, it's like putting block work together. And the weak foundations, you see that when the tidal waves, even some portions of the shoreline, you can see that there's no even foundation. The foundation there's nothing, and it just be too easy without a defense wall or any break water structures there to just sweep up all these buildings. Even the strong ones or the engineered ones are washing away, and then these homes they'll just be swallowed up by the sea.
Swallowed up, right? Okay.
So it's a big problem, yeah.
Okay, Engineer Mahama, what will it take now at this point to fix the situation? Are we going to have to bring in reinforcements for the buildings, you know, to sort of strengthen the structural integrity? Or is the answer just the sea defense?
Did you do any course in engineering?
No, I didn't.
Wow. No, the buildings there, they don't need any structural, what do you call it, to strengthen their foundations. They are gone. All the buildings there are gone.
Wow.
They are gone. I mean, like my engineer said, you can see from the videos and the shot that you have that there are no foundations. There are no reinforcements. And those buildings are virtually gone. You cannot reinstate them into any state or to rule what we call the retrofitting. You cannot do it. They are mud houses. They are blocks. They don't have columns. They don't have better foundations. And so the only thing that we have to do now is ensure that the shores are protected or drastically minimized in terms of at least even the ad hoc that they are doing now, trying to put those stones, the boulders there, to at least minimize the effect. And then government would have to do a comprehensive redesigning of the area to continue with the boulders, what they call the stones and the rocks that we are using for the protection, and then allow a certain distance before any construction can take place. Because like my colleague was saying, the one you interviewed on the TV, he was saying, the one on site, he was saying that the tidal waves are increasing by the day. And so therefore we wouldn't even do the protection, and just behind the protection, people are trying to put out their buildings. Secondly, when they do the design, it is done such that when the tidal waves come and hit the rocks, they deposit silt or the sand behind, so that more or less you're having to increase the height of the place. So when these people are complaining, and ironically, in the evenings, they go and engage in the winning of the sand, then the police or the institution have to come in, the authorities have to come in. As government is trying so hard to get money to go and do the protection, the sea defense, the people cannot increase the effect by their man activity at dawn and expect government to come in. Because at the end of the day, when there's a problem, they expect NADMO to come in. So why do you complicate the situation by already the sea is already pushing your houses away, collapsing the buildings, and then in the evenings, you try as much as possible to win the sand and sell.
All right, I would want to put this to both of you. This is Israel. Now, I think we should be realistic, and I would want you to be as candid with us as possible to get us to appreciate the extent of the problem and what really needs to be done. Because it appears we're attempting to fix the problem, but their attempt is not, it's a weak attempt. And so we're pumping money into a venture that really we're not getting the needed results. What realistically should we be doing? And would it take a whole lot more money? And if we're looking at the amount of money we have to invest in it, can we then say that let's probably give up on some of the communities?
We cannot give up. We cannot give up. Whether you decide to give up, as long as the waves are increasing by the day, you will still have the sea eating the land, taking away the land. So whether people are staying there as at now or not, we would have to continue with the protection of the shore by continuing with the sea defense, whether people are staying there or not. And that is the realistic way. So if you say the solutions that are being put in place now are weak, it's not entirely the truth.
All right, because
it's expensive.
Yeah,
it's expensive. It's expensive to do the sea defense, and whatever we are doing, the constraint is finance. And once government has enough money, they would actually. That's why I told you initially that if you have say X amount of money, and you want to defend to put a protection for a certain place, you look at the severity of the locations first, and then you tackle so that you can do the others in lots. So as and when government is able to realize too much fund, then they tackle the lot by lot. So you have maybe lot 1 is Glife, lot 2 will be maybe Adan, lot 3 is Sugakope, lot 4 is Axim, lot 5 is Aflau. So you have a holistic reconnaissance survey done. You look at the critical areas that if you don't do within the shortest possible time, you're going to have problems. So that is how, but that's the best solution you can have. And if you go to Japan and Co, they are still doing, others are even doing the concrete. But the concrete that they are doing, the magnitude of the concrete for the protection, my brother will tell you the cost involved.
Okay, so that's what I'm trying to drive at that we probably would have to invest a whole lot more. And the amount of money that maybe the Japans and the rest would invest in it, and the Holland and the rest will invest in it, maybe we don't have that kind of money. So if we, because the contractor on site that we spoke with was indicating that he's doing something, but he cannot guarantee that whatever he's done can hold for a long time, because you can, if you have the waves going beyond whatever he's putting in place, then whatever he's done is a lost cause. That's the point I'm just making, that you can put up a sea defense, and if the waves go over it, it means you've done really nothing.
Yeah. Okay. It's a big challenge, yes. And all coastal areas have this risk to deal with. As my colleague, Engineer Mahama, indicated, we cannot say we're stopping the defense wall project or construction. However, he also indicated that the water or the sea is depositing sand and silt behind the defense wall, creating more beach or creating more stability at that area. Now, the decisions or some of the activities or solutions that we need to enforce and will not be simple solutions that would happen overnight. The construction of the sea defense wall has not happened overnight. It's taken years. And also the other point is a little bit of relocation or creation of a buffer zone, as Engineer Mama indicated, where we can consider that, look, given the issue at hand, everyone from maybe the defense, sea defense wall, moving in maybe 20, 30 meters or 40 meters, whatever, there will be no construction activity there. Let us make sure that that area is stabilized enough so that the sea doesn't claim more land. Unless we take that hard and tough decision, we would have to, manage this in the interim, because there are so many things that go into, coming up with a solution. Some of these, proposals we are even speaking of now, when we go and do detailed analysis, detailed studies, there may be many other factors that would even compel us to modify some of these proposals. A number of things in terms of relocating is what you relocate, where are you sending them to? Do we have land elsewhere? Would their livelihoods be not change if you relocate them? How can you make sure that their livelihoods are not seriously or adversely affected? Are you going to, in terms of the fishermen, create a landing such that they can come and work, after that leave and go and stay where they've been relocated to, so that during the night, if the waves come, they won't be asleep and the waves will be carrying them away? Do we want to also promote some afforestation? Let's plant trees along these buffer zones. Make sure that the trees are along the entire shoreline. And the shoreline is quite a long stretch, from Volta to Western region. It's, I think, over 500 kilometers or more stretch. That is huge. And if we want to even tackle the areas that are adversely affected, because of the loose beach, then we'd have to, look at how best we program this over the medium and to long term. But consistent effort must be done, consistently and to make sure that the shoreline is protected. And a lot of enforcement has to be done. We have to stop the sandwining along the beaches. It's really destroying the beach line, and the sea will take advantage of that to really wash the land and houses and property along the shoreline.
Now, I've been informed that parts of Accra, and in fact, a lot of our coast, actually happens to be under sea level. Is that correct? Below sea level? I'm putting the question to both of you, Engineer Gabriel or Engineer Abdullahi.
Yes, some portions, yes, and some portions I'm not too sure. But I know that in Accra, we along the shoreline, we fairly flat, and therefore it makes it easier for the sea to come, visit, and go back. And when it visits, it takes along what it can take. We all appreciate the fact that the sea is not silent, it's not quiet. It's moving because there's a lot of gravitational, activities between the sun, moon, the sea, and it's in motion every time. So it cannot be silent. Certain times the tidal wave should be very high. Certain times it would subside or be low, but it would not stop moving, and it would not stop visiting the shoreline and taking things, and so the residents there need to also be aware of this and know that, look, despite the fact that they've stayed in the community for a long time and, that's their livelihood, they have to start thinking a little bit further that, look, in the next 5 years, next 10 years, next 15 years, we cannot still be like this because they've been there for quite a long time and the shoreline is still receding. And so they need to think a little bit more what they can do a little bit more if they can move. So those that can move should move. Else, we can't say that all the problems the government should come and solve it. Some of the problems we as citizens, community members, we must take certain decisions to also safeguard our lives and our livelihoods.
Should we worry about a situation, a point in time when maybe as the sea advances, it's going to break through and we can have the sea taking over some areas inland that are below sea level?
Well, once we do not continue with the processes as in what is being done now, then we expect something like that to happen. People go to funerals and they come back and their homes are washed away. So as the ozone layer is still being depleted, the global warming is not going down anytime soon, because rather on records it's actually going high. So it means that the sea levels will be increasing or be raising by the day. So like we said, all we have to keep on doing is to ensure that we are still protecting the shores as and when we get. So once the defense is actually put to protect the people behind, it means more or less scientifically, we have raised Accra or the capital beyond the sea level, above the sea level. Because without that, you are competing with one of them, i.e. the water coming ashore, taking the land away, pushing people further into the capital, moving the people from the shores into inland. So basically, Israel, the engineer who spoke there, he was doing, let's say, step 1 of the defense. The step 2 is what is being done correctly. The step 3 will be doing what we call more or less doing a design review. Even the ones that are secured now, as and when it is revised, there's a possibility that the heights will start to be increased right from where it started and where it's going to end. So basically, the method of either doing a concrete defense or the one that we are doing here, it's not, but mind you, it's not even that, it's not only in Ghana that this method is being approached.
Right.
We have point A. You see, in engineering, like my engineer colleague will tell you, there are about 4 or 5 solutions to a problem. Which of them is economical and sustainable? I have so much money, I can go and do a concrete from beginning to end. It will serve the same purpose. I don't have so much money, but the option B can also take about 95% in terms of performance. So that is where we are. And like I said, whatever is being done, the proper defense right from the Volta region coming to Accra, the one that has been done successfully, you'd hear that there's no comments about the people in terms of land being encroached or land being taken over by the sea. Secondly, I feel like there should be an intense education in those localized areas as government is trying to defend or put a defense against the natural cause or the natural havoc. It's only proper that the people who are living ashore should become watchdogs and then try as much as practicable to prevent their colleagues, because they are known in the communities. I'm not sure that people will come from, what do you call it, Kumasi or Medina or Achimota to be winning the sand if they don't have other people who are supporting them within the locality. So it's only proper that once you yourself, you feel like your building has actually been washed away. Last week, somebody's building collapsed, and the next one is coming to yours. You would have to ensure that people do not sit there, whether in the middle of the night or at dawn, to win the sun. In as much as I expect that government would have to go in and put in a lot of measures to actually reduce or drastically reduce what is happening at the Cliff and other areas which are under the mercy of the sea now. Thank you very much.
No, okay, so since you talked about Sunwining, I'm curious. I thought that using sand that has salt in there is not really good for construction or buildings. So why are people doing that actually?
You see, the sand can be brought on land and will be washed. We still have, you see, when we are running a soil test for a building to be constructed, you look at the chemical composition of the soil, i.e. if you encounter water within the soil, you have to go to the laboratory and run a test on them. And there are chemicals that are anti-reactants to the salt. So people would engage in winning the sand, get onshore somewhere and sell. Some of the sands, when you bring, you see, they cannot intake, they cannot absorb any water within them. So people bring them, they wash, and then they sell. Unlike when you go to Akosombo to get the river sand, which is actually in the commercial quantity. This one, because of the effect and the counter effect is that now people can get it, they can treat it well and they use.
Right.
But it has been illegal in Ghana for a very long time. I mean, the winning of the sand along the sea in particular.
Right.
So it's just about enforcing it again. Like I'm saying, but before the government comes to enforce it, Israelite, your house is next door to mine. Mine is gone. Would you sit there and expect that government to come and do when you know that Muhammad's colleagues come in the evening to come and win the sand there? As for any material in Ghana or everywhere, there are options that you can use. There are treatments that you can engage in to use those materials to become satisfactory in any endeavor you want to finance infrastructure development.
All right, so I'm going to take your final thoughts on all of this. And from the conversations we've had so far, I get the understanding that we must have a comprehensive plan to ensure that all those areas along the coast that are facing these problems, we deal with them or tackle them head on. Otherwise, if we tackle some and leave the others, we're still going to see the sea take over those lands. I'll start with you, Engineer Gabriel Engerman.
Yes, it's true. The comprehensive plan is really required because the issue or the natural forces vis-a-vis man-made or human forces are clashing. And therefore, the dynamics of the community, the dynamics of, all our anthropogenic activities vis-a-vis what the natural process is, needs to be studied properly. And, in order to prefer a solution or a plan, it must be sustainable. You must have the money to do it and implement it. Therefore, it requires that the communities, the ministries and state agencies in charge, the professional bodies, that can support, and the citizens are all working together to get this thing. Because whether we like it or not, whatever happens along there, it affects everyone. NADMO is running helter-skelter, trying to get, support so that this comprehensive plan would basically look at the sea defense, how we protect the shoreline, how we make sure that even if the land is receding, it's not at a very high rate, so that people and communities are safe to go about their business. There are a lot of other options that can be preferred: a buffer zone, re-engineering, and what they call reinstituting an architectural design for any house to be built along the shorelines, especially the weak areas. All these things can be put in, but it needs a collaborative effort from a lot of professionals, to get it done. And the earlier we start, the better. We don't need to wait.
All right. And Engineer Abdullahi Mahama, I also understand that we're likely to lose some communities. Essentially, not all the communities that are affected can be saved.
We have already lost some of the communities. We can't lose a whole community, but portions of the community cannot be reclaimed again. Because if, let's say, according to the woman who spoke, one of the fishermen who spoke earlier, if you used to walk about 30 meters from your last building to the sea area, and now there is about just 5 meters away, and the government is going to reclaim the land. The government is not going to go into the sea and reclaim it. It's going to be too expensive. So where it is now, government will start the construction after the engineering. But that means that portions of almost all the communities which are along the sea have already lost quite a sizable parcel of land. Their lands have been taken away and they can't get it back again. Sorry.
And so to the communities that are like really close in the Glefe area, for instance, they should consider moving out because they're going to lose their homes, right?
Yes. Some portions, especially those who are very close to the sea, will not be able to reclaim their lands now. That's why I'm saying that it takes a lot of engineers. So maybe when government expresses interest in going to those areas to actually put a solution to the problem, the engineering will be done, the survey will be done, the extensive survey, and the topography will determine whether government would have to, the client, in this case, the government of Ghana, would have to go in or start at the locations where the buildings have been washed already. And that means that if the engineering report comes and they said where the last building is actually situated now is where the defense had to start, it means the lands which are now covered by the sea cannot be reclaimed again. Secondly, I think that the facilities along, once you keep on doing one area, you don't tackle the next area, which is extremely low. It's like displacement of water. So you have a water in a bucket, you put your hand in, or you put a certain object in, the water displaces. So if ordinarily we're having about maybe 100,000 liters of the sea coming at a time, and you cannot control that one, and you have just protected this side, it moves in the other direction, because that is the place that it has water will define its own course. So I blocked point A and B has been blocked. When the water comes with that speed, as it hits the area, the others will be displaced to the next area where you have not actually protected. That's why it's always important that, like I said, we look at the lowest areas and we'll start to build and then end at the end of the day. But Israel, money, capital, huge capital is involved. What I expect government to do for us now is to be able to engage a team to run a holistic and comprehensive engineering from point A to point the last point, and then see how government intends to tackle one lot after the other and how much is involved, possible source of funding. And then if government is not going to get so much money to continue, what are the houses that maybe government would have to relocate for now to save lives and property?
Thank you very much, Engineer Abdullahi Mahama. He's a roads and building contractor, and also Engineer Gabriel Engerman. He's a civil engineer.
Roads and building consultant.
Consultant, sorry. So thank you both. Thank you both for making time to speak with us. But this conversation, I'm sure we'll be having that a lot more going into the future and talking about the comprehensive plan. I hope government begins to have that conversation. When we return, we're taking a break here on the AM show. When we return, we talked about Live to Lead. It's a John C. Maxwell event hosted in the past 5 years in Ghana by the Center for Transformational Leadership in Africa in partnership with Goldfields Ghana. Details after the break. Stay tuned in.